What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. I am your host, Court. This, of course, is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
Andris is not here today. He was supposed to be, but he had a whole bunch of stuff to do. So hopefully he'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We wish him well. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. Today, we are going to be talking about the following topics. We will be doing a full spoilers review of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 4, which was titled The Whole World is Watching, which I think we're both pretty excited to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
We are going to talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge is joining the cast of Indiana Jones 5, which is currently untitled. We are going to talk about the fact that Netflix has basically purchased the rights to Knives Out Part 2 and 3 for an insane amount of money. And then we have a discussion. Chris came up with this discussion question. So, Chris, do you want to give us a brief idea of what we're going to be talking about there?
Yeah, absolutely. A popular question that people have is, what is a movie that everyone seems to love, but you hate? And just to preface, you don't actually have to hate it, but just what's a movie that everyone seems to love, you just doesn't work for you.
You don't get it.
You
right?
just don't. It just. And there was a couple that I was thinking of, but yeah, I think I have some good ones. I'm curious to hear yours.
Okay, so we'll get to that, but so to start off, we are going to talk about episode 4 of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, titled "The Whole World is Watching." Now, excuse me, Chris, you and I have said on this podcast a number of times that we're enjoying the show, we're liking it, but we haven't. For both of us, we haven't really found that hook. It hasn't really grabbed us. It hasn't been a situation of. It's been a situation of, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode, but it's never been, I need the next episode in my face right now.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a very pointed question right now. Did this episode give you that hook?
Yes. I say that with the slight caveat that I still have not reached the same level of interest that I had when watching WandaVision. WandaVision really did captivate me, and I had so many questions. So I'm not at that level of excitement. However, the cliffhanger of this episode has me salivating to see the next one. Like, what the hell happens next? And that's the first 4 episodes in. It's the first time it gave me that feeling of like, what the hell is going to come next? What do they do? So I'll give it major props for that. You posted something on Facebook similar, how it was like 4 episodes in, and now it's like you're finally like fully on board.
Yeah.
It took up until this episode to get to that point. And it seems like, without spoiling your answers, you're in the same kind of agreement.
I will say this is the first episode of the show that I have loved. I loved this episode. I thought it was great. The ending was excellent, but the whole episode I really enjoyed. I had some laughs. The action was really good. We'll get to it, but Sebastian Stan was amazing. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, even though we haven't gotten to this yet, but I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine a couple days ago. You said the ending of the episode was a cliffhanger. I don't know if I would consider it a cliffhanger. And it got a little contentious between my buddy and myself, but I was saying, like, a cliffhanger is, when the end of the episode has, Batman and Robin dangling over a lake full of sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their heads. For this, it felt like, obviously there are going to be ramifications going forward, but it felt like a very clear ending to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Someone mentioned it similarly, how I've talked before about like Avengers Infinity War, saying, oh, that is a cliffhanger. And a lot of people push back and say, no. Avengers Infinity War has an ending. Thanos won. It could have ended right there. And while there's a point, it is sort of like, yeah, Avengers Infinity War could have just ended like that, and that would have been a conclusion. The good guys lost, the bad guy won. End of movie. But this is where it gets the sort of the meta kind of ness of these franchises, where that there's something coming up next.
Right.
That's why it gives me that same sort of feeling of unanswered questions, like something else is going to happen. Like, so I feel the same way about this episode, where this could potentially, like, actually, I don't know. I think I would disagree. It's hard to say, because we know that there's going to be 2 more episodes. so of course there's going to be more. We're going to see what the ramifications are. So I have that feeling of like what's going to happen next. So it feels kind of cliffhangery for me. But also hypothetically, if we didn't know that there was going to be other episodes, is this a conclusion? Is this a conclusion to a show? Is this a conclusion to a movie? And I'd say no, unless you're like the Coen brothers, where you're just like,
Right.
it's over. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to get into a contentious argument about it, but you know what I mean? Where it's like, I get what you're saying, where it's not the cliffhanger in the sense of like, our heroes are in danger, and it just cuts like halfway in the middle. There is an arc necessarily, but it still feels like, could you imagine this being the end of like the
Right.
show?
And I wasn't saying you were wrong. I just wanted your perspective on it.
Yeah. What's your perspective on it? I'm curious.
I don't really feel like it was a cliffhanger for me.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, yes, it's episodic television, so we know there's going to be more, but that felt like a conclusion to the episode, not to the story, but to the episode.
Gotcha.
It felt like a very clear conclusion to me, and what an ending. And we'll get there. So
Yeah.
you had messaged me because you watched the episode before I did. You had messaged me that the opening like just rocked your world. That's not what you said, but you were saying that
made
you were
sweet love to my eyeballs.
Yeah, no, and you said in a title card came up and you got really excited, and so I was
Totally.
like, okay,
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like the opening shot already, it was like, oh look, it's a city in the background. Is that Madripoor? And it took me to realize, like, no, and then it just says in a title card, Wakanda. Now the rest of the scene doesn't really have much, it doesn't show Wakanda, but it's just like, it just felt great to be back. I mean, we technically haven't been there since Infinity War, same year that Black Panther came out. And I love Black Panther. I think that's one of the best that the MCU's done. And I think that the world of Wakanda is so rich and full of, something that you can explore fully. And I'm loving just the kind of the interconnection that the show is kind of weaving throughout. WandaVision, of course, felt very like kind of isolated in its own little New Jersey setting. Winter Soldier is not just like globetrotting, but it's introducing new worlds, but also kind of visiting places like Wakanda. I don't know. I got really excited because I love Wakanda, but I was also excited about the possibility of like the MCU doing what it does best, which is connecting all of these different narratives, all of these threads. Did you have a similar feeling when you saw it?
Absolutely. And I, like, even before the title card came up, I was like, are we in Wakanda right now? And then it came up, and I got chills. I really like that. Let me ask you this though, quickly. Have we actually seen Madripoor in the MCU before, or was this the first time?
It was the first time.
Okay.
I think it might be the first time it was even mentioned. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that it wasn't even like name dropped in the series so far, or the franchise.
Okay. So yeah, so this first scene we see, we find out it's 6 years prior to when this series takes place, and it's Bucky and Io in Wakanda, and basically Io is attempting to deprogram Bucky, and she starts saying the trigger words in Russian or Sokovian, whatever it is. And I thought the scene was one of the best of the series, and that's all on Sebastian Stan. He is really crushing it on this show. But like, as he's saying this isn't going to work, and she starts saying the words, and there's fear on his face, there's pain, there's fight, like he's trying to fight it, and we're seeing flashbacks to the various things that he's done over the time, including killing Tony Stark's parents. And eventually, and he's crying, and eventually she finishes the words, he doesn't get triggered, and she says, "You're free." And like the relief on his face, like his performance in that sequence blew me away. What did you think about the scene?
Oh, definitely. I completely agree. I love the scene. I loved a quick little moment where essentially Bucky was like, what if this doesn't work? I don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
And Ao essentially, without any smugness, but just pure confidence, is like, I'm not going to let you hurt anybody.
Right.
And which kind of plays into like events that happen later in this episode, where the Dora Milaje just badasses, man. They're just so cool. You don't want to mess with them. So I love that confidence. But yeah, Sebastian Stan owned this scene. This is the best that he's been in the series so far. Probably the best, single scene that he's had in his tenure with the MCU. As you said, is just there was so many different emotions that were just kind of showing up all in his face. Very little dialogue. It really is just his performance. It was just like it was pretty much a tight close up on him that lasted quite long, and he crushed it. I felt everything that he was feeling: the guilt, the pain, the relief, the joy afterwards. Really well done, and I applaud him, and I applaud the creators of the show for going to those kind of dramatic depths.
Absolutely. So I should mention, we're not going to go like sort of beat for beat through the entire episode because we don't want to belabor the point. But so we're going to move on to, we're going to talk about Carly and the Flag Smashers for a minute. And I will say for me, and I think this is a bit true of you as well, Chris, but for me, like that subplot has been the driest part of the show. I don't find, well, again, until this episode, we didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. We knew that they wanted to get back to what it was like during the blip. We didn't know why. I found the character of Carly until the very end of the last episode where they did the sort of terrorist bombing of civilians. That's when I kind of went like, okay, now you have my attention. But I found the character boring. I wasn't terribly into the performance. I believe her name is Erin Kellyman. That wasn't doing anything for me. This episode, we started to really dig into Carly and the Flag Smashers. We do find out why they're doing what they're doing. We get, and we'll talk about this in a second, but I said in my review, I'm always a sucker for two enemies having a conversation. I brought up, De Niro and Pacino in Heat. I brought up Joker and the Batman in the Dark Knight in the interrogation room scene. I love that kind of stuff. Granted, and Sam even tells Carly, like, I'm not your enemy, but they're kind of enemies for the point of the discussion anyway. Did you find that subplot, did you find yourself connecting with it more in this episode, or?
Yeah, because this episode, they really kind of dove a little bit deeper into the philosophy behind these Flag Smashers, especially Carly. And we talked about it before, but I really appreciated that. I feel as though, even though I disagree. Sam even kind of says something to this extent, because he has a great conversation with her. They just meet, just the two of them, and essentially, like, he kind of agrees with her philosophy. He agrees with her goal. Just the methods to get there, we disagree on, and I'm kind of there with him in that regard, where I don't think that she's far off the mark when it comes to the Flag Smashers ideologies. It's just, when you're putting other people in danger, when you're hurting other people, when you're burning them alive, that's inexcusable. So it's one of those things where that's what makes it more interesting. I'm still not in love with Carly as a character. I don't think that she's a terrific villain yet. The Flag Smashers still are not super interesting. They're not, how do I say it? They're not super engaging. However, I am interested in the ideologies that are being brought up, because it raises questions. It's more interesting to me than just good guy, bad guy, black and white. It's very much like shades of gray. And right. That's always more compelling drama than just, good guy, bad guy. So right. Yeah, I think they did a better job of making it more interesting this episode.
Okay. I do want to jump back, actually. There's that we get that moment earlier in the episode where they're trying to find out where the funeral for one of the Flag Smashers, sort of one of the figureheads, they're trying to figure out where the funeral is going to happen, because Sam wants to find Carly. And Zemo goes out and he pulls a Lord Varys, and he gives the little girl some candy, his little birds, and finds out where this is going to be. But I love when they got back into the hotel, where he's saying he's not going to tell them yet because he wants to keep his leverage. And I thought Bucky was going to rip it. Like, he throws the thing against the wall, and like Sam has to like calm him down. I thought he was going to tear him limb from limb. That was great. But I also really enjoyed when Sam goes like, just relax, whatever. He's just gonna manipulate you and do that stupid head tilt thing. And then it cuts to like Zemo, like,
yeah,
that was great. I laughed out loud.
No, that was a great moment. And again, Daniel Bruhl is crushing it in this role. He's really terrific and creepy, and it's like, it's again, that's the difference, I guess, between him and Carly is he does have a lot more charisma, and he's sleazier in a way. Like when he pulled out that bag of candy and was just giving it to the kids, that's creepy. I mean, everybody, I feel like anybody, whether you're a parent, whether you're a kid, whether you're just an adult without any kids, you can just identify. I'm like, hey, grown man, how about you don't just like give kids candy that you don't know? That's creepy.
Yeah.
But I also like that scene because it showed the three of them, Zemo, Bucky, and Sam. And it was great little character moments because they showed how each of them would go about interrogating. Sam was a little more nuanced. He was a little more kind of charming. He was talking to the people. He wasn't trying to be too pushy. He was trying to like come across as pleasant, like, hey, you could talk to me. I'm not a bad guy. I know I'm an Avenger, but I'm just trying to get some answers. He was trying to be reasonable. Bucky was much more like, do you know this guy? Fuck it. Like he was more brash and more kind of confrontational. And Zemo is conniving. He didn't go, his method, he didn't go talk to the adults because the adults won't talk. He knew he'd get to talk to the kids. How does he talk to the kids? He pulls out a bag of candy. Also, quick little thing of him saying, essentially, like, these were Turkish delights. These are my son's favorite. Which once again goes back to kind of him actually having a tragic backstory. Like, he's a villain, he's a bad guy, but he still had tragedy, and that kind of shaped who he is as a person.
Yeah, and I love that line was kind of just off the cuff. Like they didn't make a thing out of it, but it was just like a little reminder.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
There's no dolly zoom in on his face.
Right.
My kid's favorite. Like
right, exactly. So let's see. Then Sam goes to talk to Carly, and of course, Bucky and Lamar and John Walker are waiting outside. And of course, John's pacing around because he's, he thinks he's the man and he's got to be in charge and he should be the one making decisions, which, you get the distinct impression in that scene that he kind of thinks he's better than everybody, which plays out later. And I loved that moment where he kind of decides he's going in and Bucky just sort of gets in his way. And John just realizes like, okay, yeah, I can't fight this guy. But eventually he goes in and ruins everything because Sam was sort of just starting to get through to Carly. And then she, of course, this wasn't Sam's plan, but she thinks it was his plan until his backup gets there.
Yeah.
And all hell breaks loose. What did you think about that before we move on?
Yeah, they cranked the douche nozzle up on this dude for, like up to 11 in this episode. I mean, he was showing shades of being a dick throughout, right? But we talked about it before, how he still seemed kind of grounded and leveled to an extent. Right off the bat, this dude's just a dick. Like they're going into this meeting, he doesn't trust his subordinates. He doesn't trust Sam to get the job done. He's jumpy, he's pacing, he's bug-eyed while he's waiting while Sam and Carly are having this conversation. Meanwhile, Lamar and Bucky are just hanging out and they're just chilling. And it's just strange to me, because he is a soldier. And he's a decorated soldier, John Walker, but he really seems like unprepared for battle. He's really unprepared for conflict. And he seems, they're painting him much more like a blunt instrument as opposed to like a strategic captain, like, Captain America should be. So yeah, it was very frustrating. It's that whole thing of Sam was really kind of getting through to Carly. Again, it was our hero and our villain kind of sharing common ground. There were things that they agreed upon. Again, a lot of her philosophies rang true. It's just they differed on the methods of how to go about it. And it was showing that Sam was getting through and Sam was making progress without punching, without violence, without, super heroics, just talking to someone and being there. And John Walker had to effing ruin it. He just came in, and then she, again, she pulled a ratatouille out of the kitchen, and it ruined everything. And because she thinks now that Sam was a part of it, like it was just some stupid ruse. Very frustrating. Well done, like to really just kind of get you as far away from liking and rooting for John Walker as possible. And then sets up for a pretty cathartic moment afterwards. I think you know what I'm talking about. They meet back up at the hotel where Bucky, Zemo, and Sam are staying.
Okay,
And we get
before we get there, we have to mention that, of course, when he bursts in on the scene, we see that Zemo's escaped. Eventually, Zemo shoots Carly. She'll presumably survive, but in that moment, she spills all the extra super soldier serum vials. And there was a moment where like Zemo's looking down at us, and I was thinking, like, is he going to take it? And then I was like, no, that's completely antithetical to everything that he wants. He stomps them all. They leave, and then John Walker comes in, finds one other vial, puts it in his pocket, which of course important for later. But yes, please go on. You were
no, but you bring up a good point, because I forgot it happened in that order. But yeah, John picks up the last vial of the super soldier serum. And I'm interested. I like what they're doing with the super soldier serum in this episode, or sorry, the series, because besides, I suppose, kind of the Winter Soldier, I never really felt like the MCU gave us a proper answer of like, why don't more people just like use this? I understand that they kind of talked about like it was hard to duplicate and not everyone knew it, but it seemed like at some point the rest of the world figured out how to make super soldier serums. And we know that there could be bad guys with superpowers. I get that, but it always seemed like, well, Steve Rogers, turned out fine. But I like that what I mean is, like, I like that they're expanding upon the thing that Stanley Tucci said, Dr. Erskine, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
And the first, it's where the super soldier serum just kind of magnifies what you are underneath, like who the person you are before you take the serum is just going to be magnified. So if you're a good person, you're going to be a better person. If you're a douche, you're going to be a bigger douche. And like I said, I know that they kind of like, they showed examples of that throughout, but it really feels like in this series they're hammering it home in a good way. Like, I'm really liking, because I think it's a fascinating moral kind of dilemma to bring up. Like, if you had the opportunity, would you take the super soldier serum?
Right.
And a lot of people, like Sam says, like, no, like, hell no. And it's sort of like, it's hard to say, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's an interesting question that they bring up. Did you feel that?
I absolutely. And it's interesting because we've talked about how this show has sort of touched on the racial divide in America. And it's interesting because in this episode, it was still kind of referencing that, but in a very different way, because Zemo talks about the fact that, like, and you said, Steve Rogers, but Zemo talks about how, like, the ideas of being a super soldier and the concept of supremacy are kind of inexplicably tied together, which I hadn't thought about, but it makes sense. Like, you would feel like you're better than everybody else, because you literally are, at least in a physical way. And he says, like, every super soldier is going to be a supremacist. And they say, well, Steve wasn't. He's like, okay, touche, but there was only one Steve.
Yeah.
And I liked that a lot. But
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, they get back to the hotel. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I mean, so they get back to the hotel. There's some squabbles happening of just like, John Walker's pissed, like, you ruined it, and Sam's like, you effing ruined it. So they're squabbling, blah blah blah. It's coming to a head, a friggin' spear comes out of nowhere and almost just like takes him out. And of course, they look, and it's not just Ayo, but it's Ayo and several other Dora Milaje coming in. And love seeing the costumes again. I love Wakandans, and I love the whole mythology behind them. So seeing them come in was awesome. And then just an epic beatdown happens.
Good. Let me just interject. You were saying that, like, they're really badass, which they are, and we'll get to that in 1 second, but like, they're physically badass. But that line where he goes, like, the Dora Milaje don't have any jurisdiction here, and Io goes, the Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever they find themselves. I was like,
Mhm.
fucking right.
Yeah, no, I noticed that too. I just figured, like, I had this image when I heard that people, whoever wrote that line in the writers' room, was just like high-fiving people after. It's like, yeah, that's the shit. No, because it was. I mean, it's awesome. It's like that confidence, and it's that earned confidence that John Walker does not have. You know, like if he were to say something like that, you'd just be like, whatever. But you hear that coming from the like Ayo or the Dora Milaje, and you're just like, damn straight. Like you wouldn't, you don't want to cross any of them.
Well, he
Yeah.
actually did kind of try and say something like that because he's about to face off with Sam, and he's like, "Why don't I put the shield down just to make it fair?" And it's like, "Fuck off."
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't buy it. It's this unearned confidence. He's like George Costanza in the sense of like you don't need to be this confident. So we do get to see a pretty good beatdown. One little thing is that I thought that John Walker held his own a little too well in certain points.
Okay.
Regardless, it was the Dora Milaje versus him. Um, what's his name? Lamar was trying to help out too, and clearly the Dora Milaje just wiped the floor with them. And there's some great moments throughout. Like you see Zemo just taking a drink, and then there's a certain point where Sam and Bucky are watching, and John Walker's essentially like, "Is someone gonna help me out?" And Bucky's just like, "You got it, man. Way to go. It's all you."
Looking strong there, John.
That's the kind of that MCU humor that works for me, where it's less kind of like beat you over the head with it, but more just kind of like it's it's character revealing, and it's just interjected enough to keep things light while the action scene's happening. And then probably one of the coolest. I mean, you can interject because like I'm going to talk about the end of it, but probably one of the coolest shots of the show so far is when one of the Dora Milaje, like Steve before him, just kicks the shield up and she's holding the shield. I was like, I didn't even know that was an image I needed to have in my life. Oh, yeah. But I'm so happy seeing the Dora Milaje in garb with the spear and the shield. That's just like, geekgasm. That was awesome, man.
Yeah, that was good. A couple of my favorite moments from that battle were when, I don't know if it was Io or one of the other ones, but she like, so the spear that's sticking out of the pillar from like the very beginning of the scene, she like throws him into the spear. That was great. Yeah. But also when he was like over by the table and they throw the spear and it goes like through the guards on his shield into the table, so he's like stuck in the table. That was badass. I loved that. And of course, eventually Sam and Bucky do get involved because they're trying to like diffuse the situation. And Io just like takes Bucky's arm off. That was great.
Yeah. She does that was little very thing. Yeah, like Kill Bill, Five Fingers. Yeah. And he was like, I love his face too when it falls off. He's just like, I didn't even know that could fucking happen. Like
Sam even says, like, did you know they could do that? He's like, nope.
I was getting major Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story 1 vibes, where he's like, this is, you know what I'm talking about, or no? Where he loses his arm and he's just like waving it around.
Oh, that's right. That's
a dumb reference. Don't worry about it. But
I haven't seen that one in a long time. But
two things I want to touch on that you mentioned is like little subtle touches or little subtle things like throughout, again, that just kind of highlighted how badass the Dora Milaje were, where, like you said, they threw the spear in a kind of like, it kind of like stuck the shield, John Walker's shield, and he just couldn't get it out. He kept trying and trying and trying. He couldn't do it. And then you just see the Dora Milaje without any effort just take the spear out. Just little things like that to show just how strong they are. Right. And even afterwards, John Walker was essentially like, man, they didn't even have superpowers. They didn't even have the super soldier serum, and they wiped the floor with us. And just you could see just how butthurt he was, how upset he was over it, how much this dude is so insecure. He's a really, really insecure villain, which is interesting.
Well, and I feel like that line, and I thought his Wyatt Russell's delivery of that line was really good. But that line really kind of informs his character for the remainder of the episode completely. And so the next scene that I really want to talk about is the scene where he's sitting down with Lamar, and he's basically asking Lamar for his approval to take the super soldier serum. So he's saying, if you had the option, would you take it? And Lamar's like, hell yeah. And he's saying, you're a decorated war hero and blah blah blah. But can you imagine like that day in Afghanistan or whatever it was, the worst day of our lives? But can you imagine how much better it would have gone if you'd had the serum? And you see that kind of resolve in John Walker's eyes. One thing I loved about this episode, because in watching that scene, I was like, okay, so he's gonna take it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they didn't show it to us.
Yeah.
I in that moment, I was like, don't show it. I don't need to see him sticking a needle in his arm and getting all roided out. Like,
yeah,
reveal it in like an action scene, and that's exactly what they did. So, where does it go from there? Are they like tracking?
So essentially, yeah, they Carly and the rest of the Flag Smashers. One of them, I think, is her brother, maybe.
I did kind of get that impression. Yeah,
I thought she said it, but I could be wrong. But essentially, they're talking, and they're like, "We got to split these people up. We got to split up, Sam, Bucky, and John Walker, yada yada. We have to kind of pit them against each other." And one of the ways that Carly does that is that she's able to track down who Sam is and information about him. She essentially blackmails him by threatening his sister and his family. And that kind of brings Sam with Bucky along, even though she said to kind of come alone. There's going to be a second meeting between Carly and Sam. And because Carly essentially she's trying to separate him. She's trying to break everyone up, but at the same time, it's still she said as much. She still has some sort of trust in Sam. She kind of feels that there was a bit of a connection in regards to, I think I can kind of trust this guy. I don't think this guy's trying to screw us over. So let me try to get in touch with him. And so that's when they kind of meet up.
But I did think it was very telling that, and she even says, when Sam shows up, he's like, "You threatened my sister," and she's like, I would not harm your sister. Like, she's not my enemy." But it's interesting to me that the first time they meet up, Sam's in cities. This time, like, he's not coming to just have a chat. Like, he knows that it could throw down. He's in his full gear, his tactical gear, what have you. But yeah, so they're having that conversation, and then is that when John and Lamar show up?
Yeah, so essentially a similar time where they were tracking Bucky and they're tracking Sam. So for the second time.
Oh, that's right, because Sharon was monitoring them with the
satellite. Oh yeah, Sharon's back. So we're glad, because we were talking about Sharon. We were hoping that she wasn't just going to be one episode. She was back again in this. Some people are thinking she's the power broker. I'm not throwing any of those theories out there again with the WandaVision. I got burnt out. I'm just gonna let the show reveal it to me if they even do that. If it's Ralph Boner again, whatever. I'm not gonna. That would be good if it was just Evan Peters and he's like, it's Boner. So yeah, they interrupted again for the second time. A bigger rumble happens. Like they're fighting. The Flag Smashers with superpowers are fighting our whatever team they are now, the Falcon, John Walker, etc. And it gets real. Like they're fighting, and there's a quick moment where, like I said, like John Walker's fighting. One of them seems to be holding his own, doesn't seem to be doing that well. But then all of a sudden, he just launches the shield, just bam, gets stuck in a concrete wall. And like you said, it was a great, nobody says it. Nobody says the words, "Oh my God, he took the super soldier serum." It was all visually. I know it's obvious, but I'm glad that nobody said the stupid lines. It was all conveyed visually. This dude took the super soldier serum. Why? That's hard for me to say, apparently. That's like the 15th time I messed it up.
It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, which I appreciated. I agree with you. Like, I didn't need to see him actually injecting himself. I liked that reveal. Yeah, how did you feel about the reveal of just like with the shield?
Well, see, for me, like the shield didn't sell the idea for me. I was like, I was pretty sure he had taken it anyway. And that happened. I was like, okay, but we've seen the shield like smash into stuff. And so maybe it's not that. And then he kicks a dude and launches the guy. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure. The moment for me that sold it was when the guy has the bar, the big metal bar, and he just like bends it like it's rubber. That was like, okay. And I think that's the moment where Sam or Bucky look up, and that's when they make the connection. And like you say, nobody says it.
Yeah.
We're all thinking it, but
yeah, there was no like re-explaining the rune thing from the end of WandaVision, right, where it's like it was just kind of, yep, this is it. So yeah, pretty brutal fight happens, and I forget which one. It might have been Carly, but I think Carly was the one that she just kills Lamar. pretty brutally. Like she throws him or kicks him, and he just lands against his back against the wall. Just kind of blood's coming out. A pretty bloody episode, pretty bloody show for MCU. I felt bad because it's like, it's not that Lamar was like a fan favorite character, or I was like, I really loved him, but it felt kind of like just kind of using him as a catalyst, which is, it happens. But yeah, from there, that leads up to the real shocker of the episode, the final moments. Do you want to talk about the fight leading up to it before we get into that, or?
I'm not really remembering any super specifics about the fight, other than like the way she launches Lamar into the pillar, and the way he like hits it. I can't articulate why, but the way his head moved, something like immediately I knew he was dead.
Yeah.
It's, like in a lot of these shows, we see people get thrown around and they're usually okay, but I don't know if it was the way they shot it or the way he moved or what, but immediately I was like, this guy's toast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I felt that too. Just there's something about it where it's like, oh, he didn't land right. Like you could just see it. That looked like it hurt. Yeah, nothing too memorable about the fight prior to, besides that. John Walker comes up and he's just kind of like Lamar, and it's just like that. But
like that,
he gets pissed, and this is the separation between the final clearest separation between Steve Rogers and John Walker, where when Steve Rogers lost his best friend in the entire world in the first Avengers, when he saw Bucky go down, he didn't, he continued to be a soldier, he continued to fight the mission or continue the mission, but he didn't go on a murderous rampage.
Right.
And that's essentially what John Walker does. They come out into the streets I believe they're still in Latvia.
I think so, yeah.
It's a big public square. There's people everywhere. Like, holy shit, that's Captain America, because he's in costume. And John Walker tracks down one of the Flag Smashers. It's the guy that potentially is Carly's brother. We're unsure about that. Sorry, guys. Don't yell at us in the comments. But it's maybe him. And he gets knocked down. And he's just like, hey, man, it wasn't me. It wasn't, like, begging for his life.
Right.
Like that scene in Miller's Crossing with John Turturro. Just like, look into your heart. And John Walker shows no mercy. And probably the most surprising bit of violence that I've seen in the MCU. He uses the shield and we don't know if he decapitates him. We don't know if he just smashes his face in. I'm thinking more smashy face.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, he's just wham, 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 and there's blood on his face, and you see the blood on his shield. He murders this dude.
He beats him to death with the shield.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we sort of get the final shot, that villain shot and we see everyone standing around, everyone's filming it on their cell phones. And that's when the title of the episode, the whole world is watching, really clicks. But then we see John Walker, full Captain America gear, holding the shield, and the shield is covered in blood. And that, for me, that shield and the Captain America thing, it's such a symbol of hope and good, and to have it, as I said in my review, to have it like desecrated with the blood of another human out of rage was like, it was a shocking image.
Oh, totally. Yeah, just it was shocking, especially because this isn't Zack Snyder's Justice League. This isn't this isn't meant to be The Boys on Amazon Prime. We've come to expect a certain level of violence and seriousness with these Marvel movies. Now, they've had a little bit of blood before, and there's gun violence and such, but it all feels very PG-13.
Right.
And this really, it's pretty bloody. It's not the most graphic thing ever, but yeah, just that image of a good amount of blood on the shield and him just standing there. And yeah, you see people recording him on their phones. And just like how that's going to go viral, that Captain America, everything that's supposed to be good and honorable about this country, just murdered this dude in cold blood. Yeah, I also liked real quick the kind of the parallel imagery that they did, where there's a similar moment at the end of Captain America Civil War, where after Captain America and Tony have fought, and Tony Stark is on the ground, he's pretty much defeated. His helmet's off. and we see Cap over him, and he raises up the shield over his head, and there's a close up of the shield, and he showed Tony kind of covering his face, but Steve brings it down on his arc reactor. He wasn't trying to kill him, he wasn't trying to hurt him, just wanted to end it.
Right.
And it was a similar imagery of like, okay, John Walker's lifting it up. He is in the same position that Tony was in, or so that Steve was in, where he could have just killed Tony, but he didn't. He spared him.
Right.
And John Walker didn't. So I really enjoyed that kind of parallel.
I didn't make that connection. That's a good call though.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier about potentially, about is this either a cliffhanger or not a cliffhanger, regardless of like, the semantics of it. I think we can both agree that it's like really got us both excited for what happens next. Like, what are the ramifications of this? Especially because so many people were filming it. It's not just how is this going to affect this character, which is also a thing. How is this going to affect this character morally? Like his conscious. How's it going to affect the other characters? But how is this going to affect the world? Seeing this happen.
Yeah.
It's what. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Falcon Winter Soldier. Yeah, for me, easily the best episode of the series so far. We have 2 more to go, and then it's Dunzo. Do you know off the top of your head when Loki starts?
I believe it's June 11th.
Oh, okay, so they're really going hard.
Yeah. So we get unlike with WandaVision, there's a little bit of a breather in between these, which is good. I think that's good.
Yeah. So we are going to move on. We have a little bit of entertainment news to talk about. So they are officially making Indiana Jones 5. That's been talked about for years upon years. I don't know why they're calling it Indiana Jones 5 when there are clearly only 3 Indiana Jones movies. That's weird to me, but
bizarre, yeah.
A very, very strange thing. But so we don't know very much about it as of yet, other than obviously Harrison Ford is going to be back. I believe we're told that what's his name? Shia LaBeouf will not be back, which is fine by me. Not that I dislike him as an actor, but I hated him in that movie.
Apparently he's a bit of a dick in real life too. So
I've heard that. But so
allegedly, we don't know. Yeah.
Yes. But the news is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has been hired to be the female lead in the movie. Now, I will say for me, I have not watched Fleabag, and I have heard it's amazing.
Dude.
Is she in it, or is she just the writer?
She's in it. She's the creator and star of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard it's wonderful. For me, I pretty much only know her as like the sexy robot from Solo, and it's
sexy robot.
It's heavily implied that she's banging Lando. It's heavily implied. So
he puts it in one of her USB ports. It's
right.
Common knowledge. Yeah.
Right. So I know her from that, and I liked her in that as the voice of whatever the robot was called, or the droid, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I think a couple seasons ago she hosted Saturday Night Live, which for me is always a bar. I know a lot of people hate SNL. I still like it because I used to do sketch comedy. I love sketch comedy. So, but for me, like a lot of times, doing well on SNL can really change the way I think. I never gave The Rock the time of day because I was a wrestler turned actor, and then he hosted SNL and he was amazing. And I was like, and I love The Rock now.
Yeah.
She crushed it. I remember that. She absolutely crushed it. So what are because you have watched Fleabag, what are your thoughts on her joining Indy 5?
I love her. I think that she's phenomenal. Fleabag is absolutely terrific. Like, it's so well written, it's so clever, so smart, and she's so hilarious in it. It's just like the driest, really dark British humor, and she crushes it as a writer. She crushes it as an actress. She crushes it. So I am excited. I'm interested in anything that she does. Like, it was announced a bit ago that she was going to be in this Mr. and Mrs. Smith kind of reboot for television with Donald Glover. I'm really excited about that. So I'm always interested in anything that she does. You, Court, and anybody listening, if you haven't seen Fleabag, check it out. I promise. Just watch the first episode, and if you're not laughing after the first episode, then you can send angry messages to me. But if I guarantee you, anybody who watches the first episode, you're like, this is great. So I think I'd be more interested if she was starring and co-writing it because I think that she seems to work best with kind of the material that she kind of writes for herself. Because she was in Solo, and she mostly was a voice, and she was fine. Like she wasn't really memorable in Solo,
Right.
But she's still but she was a robot. You didn't really see her face, didn't really see her expression. So I'm excited. I think I mentioned before how when bringing up this topic, I wanted to ask you whether you thought Indiana Jones 5 was actually even going to happen. This seems to be more promising proof that this is going to happen. I asked that because it's been 13 years since the last one that you refused to acknowledge, and
with good reason.
Yeah, and that's a long time. The entire time, like even right after that movie came out, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do Indy 5. We're gonna do Indy 5, Indy 5, Indy 5." And every year it was just like, "Oh, it gets pushed back, pushed back, pushed back." They were supposed to have the sequel out prior to like Disney even buying Lucasfilm, and then
Right.
when they did, they made a clear thing. Like the big news in 2012 when Disney bought Lucasfilm was like, "Oh, Star Wars, Star Wars," and it's like, no, no, no. They also bought the rights to Indiana Jones. We're going to be doing something with that. So Disney's had the rights to Indiana Jones for going on. Okay, technically going on 9 years now. Wait, no. Yes, yeah. 2012 is when they got the rights to Lucasfilm.
Okay.
And they haven't done anything with Indiana Jones yet, which is why I was like, for a while I was unsure that this thing was going to happen. Even when they, Steven Spielberg stepped down, they got in James Mangold to direct, and everything just kept getting pushed back. Do you think that this casting is a good indicator that this movie will actually get off the ground, or do you think it's going to just fizzle out again?
I think it is a good indicator because with all of the talk about an Indy 5 for all these years, outside of Harrison Ford, nobody was announced. Like they never even made the step of hiring anybody. I'm not sure if they even ever had a director on board. And I got to say, like, I'm psyched that it's James Mangold because I loved Logan. I thought Logan was amazing. I also think it's at the point now where it's kind of like, I think the people at Lucasfilm and Disney, I think they understand like it's now or never because Harrison Ford has got to be pushing 80 at this point, I would think. I mean, he was looking kind of old and slow in the last one. I still love seeing him do what he does, but you can't keep pushing this thing,
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do, man. He's 79, and they haven't even started filming. There's not even like a predicted time of when they might start filming. He may not even start filming until he's 80. So clearly he's not going to be an action hero again. Is he going to be just sidelined? Is he going to be the Sean Connery character from Last Crusade? And there's going to be someone younger in like as kind of like a passing of the mantle thing, someone that's not Shia LaBeouf. Are they going to do the thing that they've been talking about for a while, which was like a spec script for a Die Hard movie where it's going to be like a prequel / sequel? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like there's going to be present day, or in this case, it's going to be, I don't know, the 60s or 70s. Indiana Jones is going to be in the 70s and he's an old man. And then it's intercut with him as a young man in the 20s or whatever. And they're going to find a younger actor. It's just, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't even know what the plan is. So I'm not even really that excited about this. Like it's a terrific original trilogy. The first 3 Indiana Jones. Like you, I'm not a fan of the 4th one. It just felt, it was, I feel like everybody wanted to have another Indiana Jones adventure. And then when we got one, we're like, it's okay. And I think
also is like, George Lucas, you have 6 other movies with aliens. Did you need to bring aliens into this?
Yeah, that's one thing. I've talked about it, and a lot of people have defended it, where it's like, I'm not a religious person, but at the same time, to me, there's just a distinct feeling. There's just a different kind of feeling of like weird mystical kind of spiritualism. And then aliens.
Yeah.
Now, like someone else that like I've been friends with, they're an atheist. They're like, well, both are fake. And I'm like, it doesn't feel the same. Indiana Jones and in the Lost Ark and magic, that works. Aliens, just whatever, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it just felt completely out of place. I just have to throw this out there because you mentioned Die Hard. I have the perfect title for whatever the final Die Hard movie will be. I have the perfect title: Old Habits, Die Hard.
That's amazing.
Right?
Bruce Willis, if you're listening, just copyright that as ASAP before someone else does, because that's amazing.
I've been sitting on that one for a good few years now. I'm very proud of myself.
No, I actually like that. As much as I don't want them to make another Die Hard movie,
right?
If they do, it should be that title.
I agree. All right, so let's move on. We're going to talk about Knives Out, unless there was anything you wanted to add.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is great. Don't know what type of role. Hopefully not a romantic interest for Harrison Ford. I don't think they'll go that route, but anything that she's a part of is great. So, yeah.
All right. So moving on, Netflix has acquired the rights to Rian Johnson's, I guess, what will be a Knives Out trilogy. So Knives Out was 2019, I believe.
Correct.
It had a crazy cast. It really sort of got, I've been singing Ana de Armas's praises since Blade Runner 2049. Knives Out really got people talking about her because she's wonderful in the movie. Daniel Craig's hilarious. What did you think of Knives Out, just quickly?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm a massive kind of whodunit person. Like, I love the novels of Agatha Christie, good mystery novels, and I love kind of classic closed door mysteries where it's like someone died, we're in a big spooky mansion, very Clue. So it was already right up my alley. I probably would have liked it regardless, but it went above and beyond. Like, it was very clever, very well written, and directed by Rian Johnson. Ana de Armas, that's her best role so far, because I've seen her in other things, and she's good, but she really knocked it out of the park with this. Terrific cast all around. Jamie Lee Curtis and what's his name, Don Johnson. You have Christopher Plummer, the late Christopher Plummer, Chris Evans, and of course Daniel Craig as this goofy French, what's his name? LeBlanc? What's his name?
What was his name?
I'll look it up.
I can't remember, but he had he had that that foghorn leghorn accent going, and
yeah. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that it's probably one of the best things that Rian Johnson has done. And right off the bat, as soon as it was done, I was like, because it was right around the time they were talking about possibly doing other adventures with Benoit Blanc. That's his name.
That's it.
The Further Adventures of Benoit Blanc. And I'm like, I'm for it. Give it to me.
So apparently they're giving it to you. So Netflix has acquired the rights, as I said, for Knives Out 2 and 3. What did you say it was, like $450 million?
It seems like the official total is coming out to $469 million.
Jesus.
So I have some breakdown of like what that money's for, how they're doing it. It's pretty wild, actually.
Okay.
So to put this in perspective, like it's $469 million for 2 movies. The original movie cost maybe about $40 million to make, and one of the crazier things about this is that most of this money is not going towards the production of the movies. It's saying that reports are saying that Rian Johnson, star Daniel Craig, and executive producer Ram Bergman, who produced the last Knives Out, as well as other kind of Rian Johnson stuff, they're close friends. Each of them are looking to walk away with upwards of $100 million each. Not 100 million divided by 3, 100 million for each of them. And the only stipulation that's coming out of this agreement that Netflix has essentially is that it's only going to premiere on Netflix, and Rian Johnson gets full creative control. However, the production of the films must match the production budget of the first film. And so I'm going to get the actual number of that in just a second. But essentially what that's saying is that it's about 40 million for 2 movies. So they're going to make 2 movies for about under 100 million. The rest of that is going to 3 people. And that just is insane to me.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be one thing if like, let's be honest. I like Rian Johnson, although I have yet to see Looper. I hear it's awesome. He directed my all-time favorite episode of Breaking Bad. He directed a couple great episodes of Breaking Bad. But let's be honest, prior to Knives Out, he directed Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and a lot of people like hate that movie. I don't mind it. It's certainly not one of my favorites, but it's like if he were this lauded director, lauded, I don't know how it's pronounced, that everybody loved, and they were trying to, get him, the way that Christopher Nolan's been at Warner Brothers like this whole time, like if Netflix were trying to lock him down as a filmmaker just to work for them.
Yeah.
And if everybody loved Rian Johnson, I would get it. But that amount of money, again, for Knives Out, which I don't know off the top of my head how much money it made.
I got it up.
Oh, okay.
So on a budget of 40 million, it made 311 million worldwide.
That's not that great.
No. So here's the thing. That's a success. So I thought not to interrupt if I don't know if you were going to add more, but so the first movie was critically acclaimed, nominated for several Oscars, or at least a couple Oscars. And it was financially successful. Over $300 million on a $40 million budget. That's a hit. And I could see immediately why a sequel would be greenlit.
Absolutely.
But it's just the sheer amount of money that was given is weird. And here's the thing: I'm not trying to poo-poo on their success. Good on Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig. Get that money. I'm happy for. Honestly, I'm happy for him. It's like a amazing success story, that in the sense that Rian Johnson was an independent filmmaker, and it wasn't a Star Wars movie that gave him his bread and butter. It was essentially his own creation, this own franchise that he created. That's his moneymaker. So I'm ecstatic for him. But the numbers don't make sense to me. They really don't. To put it into context, it's like there've been other really high profile kind of like exclusive deals that that directors have been making. Like J.J. Abrams, I believe, kind of signed on for like a $250 million thing for DC or for Warner Brothers. However, it's not for one movie, it's not for two movies, it's for like several years worth of content. Right. Same with the creators of the show Game of Thrones, like Benioff and Weiss. They signed a multi-million-dollar, like crazy, upwards of $100 million deal with Netflix as well years ago. However, it's for multiple projects. It's not two movies.
Right.
And when it comes to like, okay, Rian Johnson's getting $100 million for two movies, that's the kind of thing where I wouldn't really bat an eye, because I agree with you, where it's like, Rian Johnson, Brick, his first movie is quite good. It's a good little indie film. Then he made The Brothers Bloom, which is a good movie, didn't make a lot of money. Looper, which was critically liked, didn't make a lot of money. The Last Jedi, which got critical praise, made over $1 billion, so it was a financially hit, but very divisive online. So yeah, but Knives Out was the first one that really seemed to be like a proper critical audience and financial success for Rian Johnson. So he's got one.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Like if you were to tell me, Netflix signed Christopher Nolan and gave him $100 million, I'd be like, that makes sense. The dude is a moneymaker, and not just with franchise stuff, his own original ideas, Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, all made major money. Quentin Tarantino, I can understand. You want to just sign an exclusive deal with Tarantino, that kind of money makes sense. Rian Johnson, it's not really adding up.
Well, and when you said how much the movie made on its budget, and I said that's not great, I didn't mean like it wasn't financially successful, but I mean,
yeah,
if you're spending $400 million, that doesn't make sense. If the movie had made $1 billion on a $40 million, okay, that I would understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was profitable, but it wasn't crazily so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is crazy to me. Not to mention, because not a lot of people saw Knives Out. Does Netflix really think the number of new subscribers they're going to get for Knives Out 2 and 3 is going to be anywhere worth an investment of that level?
Yeah. Here's the theory. No, you're right, because here's the theory of why they're potentially doing this, and it doesn't make a lot of money sense, but it's possible. I'm not a money guy, but it's possible that this could pay off for them for the future. But it's also possible they could just shoot themselves in the foot. Essentially, what I've been reading about and what other people are speculating is that this move is far more it's more of like a power play. It's far more for show than it is about this specific IP. So it's a few things of one, it's Netflix showing that they are willing to throw down the money, whatever capital you want as a filmmaker. If they trust you, they will give you what you want, and it's creating this buzz, this interest among other filmmakers. I mean, it's hard to say right now, but the intention is to create this buzz of someone. If Amazon Prime were to go up to Martin Scorsese and say, hey, we will give you X amount of money to make your next movie, and he's like, yeah, well, Netflix just gave $100 million to Rian Johnson, so I'm going to go talk to them. So it's a way of potentially cultivating more talent to come in later, as well as showing that, because I think this is a first, correct me if I'm wrong, where it's going to be a franchise that started out as a theatrically released only movie. So it was a theatrical released only franchise. Now the next two sequels are only going to be exclusively streaming. It's much more of like this weird kind of like flex of just kind of like, look how much money we have. We can get anything we want. So in a way, people are theorizing that it's more about showing what they're capable of and showing that it's like, if need be, we could do whatever we want, as opposed to like Knives Out 2 and 3 are going to be the biggest hits of all time for them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that. It's still crazy to me.
No,
but
it is. Yeah. So I don't want to say that that's like proven theory. I don't want to say that like this is going to work out for sure. Cause like I said, a lot of people think it could be just shooting themselves in the foot of like, you know what? Does that mean that you're going to have to throw down 100 million times anytime you want to pull, get someone on board? Todd Phillips, he made a lot of money for Joker. Do you want to sign him for a deal? Yeah, well, you're going to give me 50 million, but you gave Rian Johnson 100 million, so I'm going to walk. It sets a bad precedent of how much filmmakers can expect to get for their properties.
Right.
And so it could obviously like be a very bad decision overall. Are you kind of leaning? Do you have an idea of like, do you think it's going to be a good decision for them? Or are you kind of feeling like this is probably not a good idea?
If I were the one signing the checks, I wouldn't make this deal. It doesn't make sense to me from a numbers perspective. I'm not good at numbers, but still, it seems, and even if it is a flex, even if you're just trying to be the big dog, like, I don't know. That's a crazy investment. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Hell yeah. I'm right there with you. Even though I was trying to, I was talking about how other people perceive that it might be. I'm more like you, where like, I don't think it's going to result in, it's going to give you the results they're looking for. For like I said, for Knives Out, I think that it's a movie. If you wanted to buy this deal, make it a deal where you can cover the production cost, give the three people, Rian Johnson, Bergman, and Craig, a pay raise. You know what I mean? Like normal directors, like a big payout for directors, just to put it in perspective, per movie. I think like Christopher Nolan is one of the highest paid directors ever, and he was paid 20 million for Tenet. No, Dunkirk, something. He's like 20 million is like the threshold. You could fucking, sorry for the cussing, but it's like you could finance the two movies for the same cost. So it's 80 million for two movies, plus give Daniel Craig Johnson, the producer, $20 million each, and it would only be 140 million. Like, right. I don't understand. You could still make as big of a splash. So I'm right there with you. I think this is a weird bonkers. I'm good for Rian Johnson and them, but I have no idea who greenlit this.
Right. All right, so we're going to move on to our discussion in a second. But first, I forgot I was going to mention this. Forgot to tell you I was going to mention this, but I just want to make a quick recommendation for anybody watching.
Oh, yeah.
Amazon sent me screeners for a new comedy series. It's an Irish comedy series called Frank of Ireland. It is written by and stars, apparently I said in my video, and I was corrected on Twitter, I said Brian Gleeson. Apparently it's Brian. Irish names can be difficult, but Brian and Donald Gleeson are two of the main characters in this show. 6 episodes long. They're all about 22 to 25 minutes. This show is hilarious. And I will say this, when I got the screeners, they weren't mislabeled, but they were in the wrong order. So
Okay.
I watched the second episode first unknowingly. And I was kind of like, that was a jarring intro, but within 2 minutes, I was laughing out loud. I finished the second episode, realized my mistake, went back, watched the first. I binged the entire series in like 3.5 hours. This show is hysterical. I didn't know that the brothers Gleason. I know Donal. He's of course in Star Wars, and I don't know if you watch Black Mirror, but he was in the episode Be Right Back. He was terrific in it. Brian Gleason, I don't know too terribly well. These guys are really funny dudes, and again, they wrote it. So it's dropping on Amazon, I think, on the 16th of this month. I highly recommend it to anybody. It's dry, it's silly, it's got some really good slapstick, it's written really well, it's got a little bit of like Arrested Development vibes at times. So just a quick recommendation for me when it drops on Amazon. Check it out because it's really, really funny.
Right on. No, I thank you for saying that, because I know you mentioned it, but I hadn't even heard about this. I want to check it out. Dry kind of British or Irish humor is my jam. Like I vibe with that perfectly. I didn't even know that Donald had a brother. I was aware of him and his father, Brendan Gleeson,
who I love,
who is amazing. Yeah, he's in one of my top 5 favorite films, In Bruges. That's one of my favorite films of all time, and he's great in it. Thanks for the recommendation. Like I that's definitely right up my wife and I's alley. So as soon as the first episode drops, I'm gonna watch it and let you know.
Nice. I should also say, so Brian and Donal were actually. Did you see Mother? Darren Aronofsky.
Was that him in there? Because I knew Donald Gleason was in it, but his brother.
Yeah, they play brothers, and they're supposed to be the Cain and Abel or whatever.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty much the only thing I've seen him in. But
wild movie, man. Wild movie.
I saw that at TIFF, and Darren Aronofsky came out and like explained it to us all because we were all very confused, and it was cool.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to move on to. We've just got a couple minutes left to have our final discussion. Again, Chris, do you want to introduce the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just fun little discussion question. What is a movie that seemingly everyone loves, critics, audiences, just friends that you know, but you hate? Just a movie that you just don't understand all the love and the praise that it gets. Do you have something like that?
Well, originally I was going to say the Oscar-winning movie Crash, but I went off on that last week, so I decided not to go there.
And also, does anyone like that movie? Do you know anybody personally that's like, oh man, Crash?
I have one friend who thinks it's a great film, but I honestly believe, and this is just an opinion of mine, but I think a lot of people when it came out said they liked it because they thought it was important because it was about racism, so they thought that like they had to like it. And I'm not trying to take away anything from anyone who genuinely likes the film. I just
take it away.
Get the love for it. But for me, the movie is. I was talking to my friend last night. Hi, Danny. For me, the movie is. She mentioned it. And I was like, "That's the movie. That's the one." Empire Records. I don't get it.
Is that with Liv Tyler?
Yeah.
I've never actually seen that. Okay, so tell me about it.
So Empire Records, it's Liv Tyler, Renee Zellweger, Anthony LaPaglia, who I really like. The cast is all quite good, but so they all work at this independent record store, and basically it's getting bought out by some big corporate conglomerate record store, and it's they got to try to raise money to save the store. It's that story, and that's fine. But for me, particularly for a movie, I don't find it that funny. I think there are a lot of moments in the movie that are just dumb. Like at one point, the boss, Anthony LaPaglia, has been saving up money. He's going to try and use it to buy the store for himself to keep his own staff. And then one of the employees decides he's going to solve the situation. So he steals the money and he goes to like Vegas or something and he loses it all. And I was just like, really? Like that was so dumb. That was so contrived just to like make the stakes even higher. I don't know.
Yeah.
And and of course, at the end of the day, they state that they have a big concert or something and whatever. But for a movie about an independent record store, it feels like the most corporately made movie ever. Like it's the tone of the movie is so antithetical to what the movie is supposed to be about. I don't get it at all. Liv Tyler's good in it. Renee Zellweger's good in it. You know, most of the cast is good, but you know, and growing up, everybody I knew like loved this movie. For me, watch High Fidelity. It's such a better movie. And I've worked in an independent record store. It's probably the best job I've ever had. I loved it. I miss you, Sonic Temple. But yeah, I don't know. This movie.
I haven't seen Empire Records, but High Fidelity is the bar when it comes to like record store movies about people talking about in around record stores. So if you haven't seen High Fidelity, I recommend it. But damn, Empire Records, honestly, I've never seen it, but every once in a while I'll get an itch to watch like a 90s film. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of want to get into 90s vibe. Sure. I'm a 90s kid, so that's why I have a lot of nostalgia for it. The 80s had their due. It's now time for the 90s to be oversaturated in media. And that always comes up. I always see it, and you're right. It's not like it has like 100% tomato rating or anything like that, but everybody seems to like it. It's always on these lists of like great cult movies that you should watch. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Interesting though. Okay, because I trust your opinion, and I think we kind of agree more often than not. So that's interesting that you don't like it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a scene in the movie where this like big pop star Rex Manning comes to the store, and so it's Rex Manning Day, and like I see it on Facebook all the time, like whatever date of the year it is, everyone's talking about, hey, it's Rex Manning Day, and I'm like, from that couple throwaway scenes from that kind of throwaway movie, I don't understand. For people who like it, more power to you. I get it. Record store movies are cool. That one doesn't work for me. What about you, Chris? What do you have on your list?
Well, I have one that I'm going to mostly talk about, but I'm going to reference another one because I'm a cheater, but they're connected enough that it's like I just feel like talking about it. This is one it's a pretty recent movie, and while looking through it, it seems like it hasn't had much of a lasting impact on either pop culture or people. I don't really hear people talk about it, but when it came out, I distinctly remembered bringing my then girlfriend to see it. And it's the 2015 Cinderella remake by Kenneth Branagh. Now, my girlfriend at the time was a massive Disney fan, and she had no interest in seeing this movie, which really shocked me because it was like, hey, it's Disney, it's Cinderella, it's a live action remake, it's going to be great. Or don't you want to see it? And she was like, no. But I remember so many people, like on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a really high rating. I think it's like 80s. And yeah, 83%. And so many people like Double Toasted, which is a podcast I really like. And Mr. Sunday Movies, also know the Weekly Planet, another podcast. They love it. They're just like, this is great. This is what a Disney remake should be. This is blah, 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 blah. All those other Disney remakes suck. This is great. I hated it. I thought it was really, really dull. It's not a bad movie. It's not a terrible movie. It's just there. It's just like, what is it? It's the Cinderella story minus talking animals, minus any music. What are you left with? Just boring, safe studio kind of recreations of scenes that we've seen a million times before. Have you seen the Kenneth Branagh one?
I have not. No.
Have you heard? Do you feel like you remember hearing people talk about like, oh, it's pretty good, or no?
It's kind of, that movie's kind of never even been on my radar. Like if you were to ask me who plays Cinderella in it, couldn't tell you.
Gotcha.
Couldn't tell you.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Where like, that's why I kind of have like a second little backup, one that I'm going to reference, which is also a Disney movie. But this one, like I said, I don't really hear people talk about it much. It kind of came and went, but it made $500 million worldwide. So it was a solid hit. Stars Lily James as Cinderella. It has what's his name? Rob Stark, Richard Madden, yeah, as the what's it called? The Prince Charming. Like I said, directed by Kenneth Branagh, who's terrific actor, hit and miss director. He's done some good stuff. He's done some not so good stuff. It has Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy godmother. Stellan Skarsgård's in it. Kate Blanchett. So a solid cast, but it's just so dull. Like I said, no musical numbers. It's just as safe as you can get. But the reason why I was going to say that I have, so I don't recommend it. And like I said, it doesn't seem like most people care about it anymore, but there is one that I want to say that I don't hate. It's another Disney remake, but I just did not get it. Like I'm in this weird vacuum of like, everyone absolutely loves this movie. And that's 2016 Jungle Book remake.
Okay.
What is everyone talking about? It's not a bad movie. I don't dislike it. I remember I saw it and I was like, that was pretty good. But everyone's just like, oh, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, $900 million worldwide. And everyone was referencing it like, oh, well, Jon Favreau is going to make The Lion King and he did so well with The Jungle Book. What? What? Did you see that one at least?
I did. I liked it. I didn't love it. I think for me, it was kind of more, I was just sort of more marveling at the technology of it. Like that really, like that was the first time I think I've ever seen animals look that real, particularly when they were talking, and I thought visually it was great. But yeah, I didn't love it. I prefer the animated version. Did you see Andy Serkis's Mowgli?
I did not, no.
That one I liked a lot better. That's closer to the actual book. It's dark. It's like gets kind of scary at times.
The animal designs from the trailer for Mowgli kind of threw me off. Like it had weird like human faces kind of
a little bit, yeah.
So yeah, I will say, you know, the Jon Favreau Jungle Book, terrific special effects. It's one of those things where not once was I ever, people talk about photorealism, and that irritates me because not once was I ever like, is that a real animal? Like I was never convinced. Yes, it's amazing. It's really good, but I'm just not impressed by like, well done, computer artist. You're terrific. It's in service of a story that has been done before. And it was nothing. I mean, it was something. I haven't seen the Lion King remake, but I would rewatch the Jungle Book one 100 times over instead of watching the Lion King remake, because from what I've heard, at least, the Lion King remake is pretty much like a shot for shot remake to the extent.
Pretty close. Yeah.
It deviates at some points. At least the Jungle Book from 2016 was different enough that I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, those are two examples for me. It's both Disney remakes. I'm just done with the Disney remakes. People have tried to recommend Aladdin to me. I'm just over it. That being said, we talked about it before, how I'm very excited for Cruella to come out, which is weird considering my track record with these live action Disney movies. I should not be interested in Cruella, but I'm actually legitimately excited for it. I don't know what's wrong with me. Have I learned my lesson, Court? Apparently not.
But hey, maybe it'll be good. The trailer looks like a lot of fun. I
cool.
think we agreed on that. So, So that is the show, everybody. We want to thank you guys for watching. We will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Before we sign off, obviously, we want to encourage you to, like the video, share it around, comment below with your thoughts on Falcon and Winter Soldier, or what's a movie that you just don't get that everybody seems to like. I do read all the comments. I try and respond to everything. So please do that. Of course, we will be back next week. Chris, where can people find you online?
On Instagram, I have a handle called The Art of Light and Shadow. Just a little fun movie blog I'm doing about all the wacky movies that I watch over the year, whether they're super artsy Criterion collections or just goofy whatever Steve Martin did in the 90s. It's a lot of fun.
And obviously, Andris wasn't here today, but if you want to check him out, jump on YouTube, do a search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He does sort of sci-fi horror B movies starting from, I think, the 50s all the way up till now. Really short, to the point reviews. They're a lot of fun. You guys, of course, can follow me on YouTube. You're on YouTube, so you're already here. Hope you'll subscribe. But you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Courtshake. We want to thank you guys for watching. We hope you are all safe and healthy, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Guys. Have a good one.